My employees told me that I'm supposed to introduce myself first. I am Jamie. These are my parents, Doug and Ellen. My father automated CNC machines when I was younger. So I used to be child labor. I would have to go through those machines and thread wires through them and stuff.
Can you do the lights?
I don't know. Yes, we can. So long story short, my dad built a machine for a man named Dan Janes, who makes pool cues outside of Baltimore. Dan Janes sold the machine he built to Larry Seifel down in Southern Maryland. If you don't know Larry Seifel, he owned Pearlworks and worked with Paul Reed Smith and Chris Martin to develop some wonderful inlays. So my dad went down and tried to show Larry how to work the machine that was sold to him. And Larry says, "Oh, I wanted to do this." And my dad said, "Well, it's not going to do that." And Larry said, "Fine, build me one that will." So he did. And that was the start of it. So over the years, my dad worked with Larry, but he still had his company. So as manufacturing was going overseas, and I was about ready to go to college, Larry asked my dad to join Pearlworks. And my dad was like, "This company is amazing. They don't make a finished product. They don't deal with the customer. There's no sales department. And Larry just keeps getting more orders." Yeah, I'm in. So in the meantime, I got an art degree at Salisbury. And when I graduated, my big plan was to move to Key West to be a bartender. And my dad was like, "Well, can you just try this out first?" So my dad and I worked at Pearlworks from 2002 until 2012 when we opened our own shop called Aulson, Inlay. I hope so. I mean, I feel like I would be a lot less stressed. So we opened our own shop. We did not want to. My mother fought us the whole way, but life just happens sometimes. So ironically, we use no automated machinery like my dad's company. We use all PC-based controls, which he loves. He's built all the machines in our shop except for this one, which we got from China. Works great. And then what really helped us is Chuck's inventory got into our building. So all of a sudden we were like a reputable company because the Duke blessed us. And that's my son Jackson, learning how to use a rotary phone from Chuck. So now we have...
When kid hands you a big phone and says, "Talk on it, talk on it."
So now we have 4 employees, and they're awesome. It's hard to find an employee because I guess if somebody went to school here, maybe, but other places, you don't learn. So they all are awesome, and graphic designers, bartenders, microbiologists, archaeologists. And I've gotten to do some really cool things over the years. Dave Nichols took his Inlay class, guitar class, invented some birds for Paul Reed Smith, and I named them after myself, Jaybirds, because he told me my ego wasn't big enough. And now people have tattoos of them. We designed an Inlay, Paul and I, that's in the Met now. Working with Dana and Roger and Dan and being a part of these projects at Martin and PRS. There's Chuck, this funny guy in the bottom right corner. Right, anyway, that's me.
That's me.
Yeah.
Look how small you look.
Look how big your husband is.
Being able to work with Chuck and Sam in Korea, I'm pretty lucky. So anyway, that's where I came from. And I'm here to talk to you about Inlay. And please stop me if you have any questions, or it's all about you guys, what you want to learn. So we're a CNC shop, obviously from the pictures earlier. I did take the hand inlay course with Larry Robinson and with Dave Nichols, and all I learned was that it's really hard and I didn't want to do it. Um, so I'm just going to go through the inlay process. This is drawing that my son made as an example. If you're not familiar with an axolotl, it's common on Minecraft. It's only found in Mexico. It's a cute little animal. Anyway.
My granddaughter's favorite toy is her axolotl.
Right?
I have a 2-year-old that knows how to say axolotl.
Well, I have an inlay that you can have. So, the customer comes to you with an idea, hopefully with a drawing and a better idea of where it's going to go and materials, but sometimes it just comes like this. So what we do is from the drawing, we'll put it into CAD, and then we'll bring it into Photoshop and start putting materials in so the customer can get an idea of what it's really going to look like. So then we send it back to the customer and we get feedback. The more the better, you know. So he loved it. He liked the smile, but he says it needs a floor, maybe different color. He actually said the bubbles should be silver and that would be epic. He was 6 at the time. So then it goes through all sorts of things, right? And then sometimes the customer throws another drawing at you and you're like, what? So then we give the final rendering approval. And from there we go and pick out our materials and prep them.
Are you at all concerned at this point about stuff which may not be doable or may be really hard to do, or you just kind of go with it and we'll work
I
out
try not to show anything to the customer that we can't do. So that's why we put it in CAD first. So it has all the fillets of where our tools are and things like that. And then at this point, if we send it to the customer with pricing and they're like, ooh, that's a bit much, then we're like, okay, well, we can take the silver dots out, or we can, you know, change this material, or, you know, work with them to meet their price point. But yeah, I don't show them anything that we can't do. So then we use Rhino and Mastercam. I use Mastercam because that's what Larry taught me, but it's insanely expensive. So all my employees use Rhino, which I've been using now, and it's awesome. So we have our pocket, our parts we've separated out. What's really great about Rhino is you can scan material and bring it in and place your parts on the material exactly where you want it. So like if there's super figured shell you want, or if there's a black part in the shell you want to avoid, it's awesome.
Now, to go from original to pocket,
Mm-hmm.
do you have to manually select pieces, or is the software somehow knows where
No.
the outline is?
I mean, it might, but I don't think so.
So you have to manually...
Yep, I would go in and delete all the lines on the inside and
Okay.
trim them.
So it's a matter of deleting lines, and whatever's left, that's the pocket.
Yeah, you want to trim all the outside edge. And then also, in order to break the parts out, we manually go in and do a small offset and trim so that each part is separated.
Are you able to do masking or grouping of components within the drawings? You handle
Yes.
things in grouped elements that way then?
Mm-hmm. Good. Once you get to that point. Yep. And sometimes we'll do that with colors to know which materials which. But what we do is when we go to program, there's a certain color we use for a tool path. So we kind of all stick with the certain colors so we can cut it. More question? So each material cuts a little differently because with this project we tried to use every material we could. So there's solid shell, silver, Operex, Recon stones, Corian, and we use Mach 3 for our machines. I don't know if anybody uses that. So from Rhino we're able to create the G code that will be run on Mach 3. And what's great about Mach 3 is you can actually see in the top right corner there, you can see what it's going to cut. So if for some reason you posted it wrong, you'll know right away because it'll look funny, you know, or it'll be on the other side of the table and you won't be able to see it. Oh, okay, I got to go repost that. video here. So certain things like opal and silver, you're going to want to change your speeds and feeds and depth cuts. Oh, I don't want to watch.
Were those Federa Fs?
Yeah. Out of silver.
So you're adjusting speed and stuff like that for every material,
Yep.
and you learn that just by experience?
Trial and error.
Trial and error.
It took me about 3 years to figure out how to cut that opal, thanks to Mr.
It's
Tim
hard.
Keel over there. And then they canceled the order.
Yeah, then we can't get it, right?
Now I know how to cut.
All right.
So what we also did in this project was utilize epoxy putty, which is great. It's great. So, and the eyeballs here, basically we just made a cavity, filled it with epoxy, and then cut the rest. So after all the parts are cut, we process them. So sometimes the processing is just sanding them out in a thickness sander. We'll tape the top and flip it over and sand out the back.
When you're cutting pocket and the material, do you cut to essentially a zero line, or do you cut the pocket slightly bigger and the material or the material slightly smaller?
We cut the parts to size, except where they meet. There's a couple thousand, there's like 1,000ths in between where they meet. And then the cavity is usually 3,000ths bigger.
Okay, so you oversize the cavity just
Yeah.
okay.
So when we're dealing with these bigger parts, we're going to put them through the thickness sander. But these parts are so fragile. What we do is we use Elmer's glue and then just put water on them. And they just come right off.
So you pre-glue the material down to a backing board with Elmer's.
I mean, it's better to have a thicker material so you don't have to prep it like that. But
Jamie, besides the Elmer's glue, have you tried like Typons and that kind of stuff?
no.
Just the Elmer's glue?
Typon takes longer to dissolve in the water.
Yeah.
The Elmer's white glue takes maybe a couple hours.
No. This one is probably 20 minutes
Yeah,
with these little parts.
I've used not Elmer's white glue, but Elmer's kids glue, which is clear, and
Oh.
it just
Really?
still pretty sticky, but
Yeah. But before, if we were trying to make this really fragile
and
part,
you can eat it.
That's the best part.
before we started using Elmer's, I mean, we couldn't process a part like that because you put it through the sander, it's going to crack, you know.
Yeah.
So now we can do actually a lot more delicate things. So we also did sand shading on this project, which is how I got to know Sean when he was working at Martin. He and Emily were working on this project, and they ended up having to make a lot more than they anticipated. And unfortunately, Emily was sick, so I got recruited to help them finish. And it was a really fun project, and I learned a lot. And now we use sand shading and everything. If you're not familiar, sand shading is really from marquetry, thin pieces of wood, and you have a sand in a pan that you heat up. You just put the wood in there, and gives you that 3D effect.
And that's actually blue stained maple that you're charring.
It is. He wanted it blue.
How thick is it?
Probably
Is it veneer thickness or is it thicker? than that?
60,000, 70, 80.
So veneer thickness.
Some woods are better than others. Again, trial and error. All right, so once we have all the parts, everyone's like, oh, you cut with CNC, that's not real inlay. I'm like, well, you still have to put all the parts in the hole. And you know, stuff happens. I mean, who would have thought that line would come up when I sanded right in the middle of his face?
You know, what's
The
that?
customer did not like that.
What's that for?
It's just from the wood when we stabilized it. That little grain of wood did not take the blue dye. But that's okay, we just cut it out and put a new one in. And
And when you cut it out, it's still on the backing board, so you can put it back on the CNC and register the position accurately enough to cut it out?
yep, I used an alignment program around the edges where I could move it a little bit X and Y to get it close.
Oh, so you manually lined it up before you pressed go?
Mm-hmm. And when our employee Lauren started working with us and started designing, and she would spend weeks on something, and she made it. She's like, "Why are we doing this? Like, this is awful. Like, all the time and energy and parts." And then we went to a guitar show, and everyone's like, "Oh, you made that?" And she was like, "I get it now." So here's some examples of the original drawing to what we ended up with.
I thought you were always not that accurate. No.
When you put all those pieces in,
Yep,
to stick them down, are they flooded with CA glue or?
yep.
Yeah, okay.
And so if we're using something like a shell or laminate, we'll make that as flush as possible. But if it's a wood or the Corian or something, if it's not perfectly flat, we don't really care, because you're not gonna, well, unless it's that blue wood, you're not gonna sand to a bad spot. So we work with Paul Reed Smith a lot. And the past couple dragons, Jeff Easley, who draws Dungeons and Dragons, provides the drawing. So we get the drawing, but then we have to kind of manipulate them to make them fit. As you can see, we had to move his leg and put the tail around, and this one's my favorite. Neil Sean. Really? Really? And this went through probably 30 different things. And at the end, he was like, "Perfect. Now rotate it 90 degrees." And I'm like, I don't even know what that is anymore. But he was very happy. Another favorite. Dana sends us the picture on the left. And Lauren, you made it magic.
So you in-house, you're artist in residence.
Yes.
You went from picture to drawing.
All of our employees can do that. And we have an amazing team right now. And we work together, bounce ideas. An example, Guy Harvey.
Great.
We actually got to see this one at the factory yesterday, all shiny. But yeah, all we got from them was this picture of a dog. Like, okay. So this is the dragon we have here that we have on the table. Again, Jeff Easley drew it. I just kind of have some examples of how it went through the process. Paul usually isn't super helpful. Make longer. What's his eye, you know? So then from there, we'll take that and put it into CAD. And then we'll start our renderings. He did not like the bird being on fire, which I think was a big mistake. The sand shading on the eagle, I mean, that's epic. So you can see, so yeah. So through months of picking materials and back and forth, this is where we ended up. So the bottom is pretty close to what we had there. And another video. I also have the bin and a drawing, because it's different when you're making just one axolotl versus 100 dragons, you know. So you really need to organize and make maps, and so that.
Well, that's the bin that's on display.
Yeah, we have it right here, just so you can make more and actually make money while you're doing it. Does anyone have any questions?
You number each cavity in the bin, and you have a sequence within which you put things together?
Yeah. So there was probably 15 bins. And then
I've been mixing those up, so it's just very fun.
this is a prototype. It's like a 2x4, but. So we're actually working on a new dragon right now, and we're in the process of making the bins. It's it's thinking a whole different way, like how you're gonna make it, but how you're gonna make multiples
Right, how are you gonna productionize
on
it?
everything. So,
Thank you.
see it out there. This is one section.
How many total pieces comprise this final result?
Are you going to count that for me?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. A lot.
More than
Big-
two.
Well, and
More than
because
two.
some of these pieces we made with like the outline on them, so they had a different process.
Right.
What is Opal 05 Blue Pacific?
That is, oh, hey, that's a segue into my next part. Yeah, it's my plant, yeah. So you can pretty much use anything as an inlay material as long as, lacquer is gonna stick to it. And so shell, gotta use the word chatoyance, it looks the best, right? Because it's got this depth and movement. But a lot of other materials do too. And if you're doing a dragon or a person or a dog, like it's really, you're not limited. It's pretty fun. And walking through this Fab Lab, I feel like they could create some really cool new inlay materials. I think you should put that on your. All right. So I'm not going to go into too much about how shell is processed and sheets are made because we're going to do that with Chuck on Friday. But solid shell blanks, they're beautiful, you're just limited by size. But the way I showed you earlier how we can put the scan in Rhino, it's just awesome that you can pick a part of the shell for a specific job.
So if you have multiple small pieces, you can lay them out on one actual shell blank to get the maximum.
Oh yeah, we hardly have any waste. So here's some examples of solid shell inlays where when it's a big piece like this and it's on the fretboard, we usually don't use laminate light colored shells like mother of pearl and gold mother of pearl because sometimes you can really see the laminated layers. They're great for other things, which I'll show you later, but this moon, like we were able to pick out that figure, and that's Roger's skyline.
Now, the upper bats, which are just outlines,
Mm-hmm. We did solid shell on those too
and you can cut that thin a piece without it cracking.
because we use Elmer's glue.
So you glue the piece down solid,
Mhm.
and then you can cut that little teeny piece,
Yeah.
and it won't crack in cutting.
Nope. Depth cuts and a diamond bit.
Diamond bit, shallow cuts, and it's not, well, you have air blowing.
We have air blowing, yeah.
Not water, just air.
How many companies out there that do this kind of thing? You have competitors?
Half a dozen, Chuck. I mean, Precision Pearl,
Yeah, probably half a dozen.
Are that,
and we're all like Pearlworks was our previous company. I mean, we try not to step on anybody's toes. I mean, Larry always said there was enough work for everybody. And if somebody calls and asks for something, it's like, well, don't you normally get that from somewhere else? Like, we're not going to do that job because that's their job, that kind of thing.
are the diamond bits diamond cutters, or is it more like a grindstone abrasive?
It's a cutter.
It's a cutter.
Yep, it's we get them from Thinkin' Tinker.
I'm sure I can't afford it.
I can send you an old one. We got them everywhere. So then this is Duke of Pearl's laminated sheets. Again, we'll teach you how they're made tomorrow. So this is an example on the left of where using a big laminated sheet was advantageous. Turned out great. And then on the right, Tim Teal invented that with Lauren.
That was a great collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Precious metals. Another Tim Teal design here. Platinum. Really? 18 karat gold? I mean,
Go platinum, baby.
but hey, whatever you want, we'll make it.
Which is more expensive these days, gold or platinum?
Platinum.
Platinum?
Yeah. The pickguard that's on that guitar, just for the material, was $22,000.
It was
Yeah.
it was terrifying putting that in the mail.
So you're cutting that out of like 60 thou thick gold or platinum?
Save the dust.
Yep, we do. We save all the dust, and we put a trash bag on the machine and save the dust and send it back.
Gotcha.
Except my husband now wants to keep it in the safe in case the world ends. And we're laughing. And it's still in the safe. So reconstituted stone, we get it from Macecraft. It's awesome because it's in every color and it's easy to cut and it's just super fun. So here's another bourgeois that Lauren designed. And it's almost all recon stone, a little bit of solid shell there, and we made his eye opal, which is coming up. So there's a company called Sanwa in Hong Kong, and they are growing opal in a lab. Like I said, it took me like 5 years to figure out how to cut it, but I got it now. But you need a lot of those diamond bits.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this stuff is hard.
It's like cutting glass.
Yeah.
It
But
takes about a year to grow a little palm-sized piece in the lab.
Really?
It's not a fast process,
it's not
Well,
cheap.
It's not fast to cut it either.
No.
and it's not cheap.
Nope. So this is the end grain of it. They have out there. I can show you, but on the top, it has stripes on the side. So those pieces are very small, and then on the top it has more of I don't know what you would call that. Not a grain, but dots. Like Tim Teal made it here again. So the company. So this is made out of 80% silica, 20% resin, which makes it like glass and very hard to cut. So then the same company came out with these where it is the opposite. So it's 20% resin and 80% whatever. You know what I mean. Opposite.
20% more.
So it comes bigger and it's easier to cut and it looks so cool. But I will say it looks completely different than the pictures on the website. So
Hey, does it still have an opal-like opalescence?
Yes.
Or is it more like recon stone?
It reminds me more of
it's
a really in-depth, crazy shell, because, and I love using this word chatoyance, but the chatoyance is off the chart.
Really?
Like you can't, like that knife handle.
Mom,
I
can you
mean,
please grab the Oprex off the
it-
table?
it-
Thank you.
It varies so much, like if you would just spin that 90 degrees, you would get a whole different pattern.
Huh?
And the term chatoyance comes from the French for cat eye.
Yeah.
Like when you get the cat eye, so it has to do with
I didn't know
the
that.
apparent movement.
I like the word too, but
So we just ordered a bunch for this next dragon we're doing, and we're pretty pleased.
How hard is this to cut?
Not
Not hard.
It's great.
Compared to, say, solid shell, is it?
It's super easy. I mean, when I made that scale, I was too lazy to put it on my CNC because I didn't want to lay it out. So I just traced it with a scribe off the original scale from that knife, and just drilled it and sanded it and bandsawed it.
You want to pass those around?
And that's just polished. So
wanna pass these
I think I
around?
sanded it with 400 grit, polished it to a
Really?
black gloss. Yeah.
Thank you.
And where do you buy this stuff?
Well, maybe Duke of Pearl shortly.
There you go.
Okay.
It's not cheap.
But it comes in relatively large pieces also.
When you say not cheap, what would a piece like that, like $20?
I think more like 100.
Really?
$100 for,
Not cheap.
Not
not
cheap.
cheap.
But where else are you gonna get it?
Well, but now this, I'm looking at it and it's transparent.
Yeah.
So do you back this with something?
And it's fun because you can back it with different colors and it looks different.
And you can use Dutch metal or gold or silver leaf.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you put that on ebony and it's gonna get much darker.
Yeah.
You could paint the back of it,
Mm-hmm.
different colors.
They're all pretty transparent.
So those are a lot thinner than this one here, because that's what size we needed for our project. But it's going into ebony, so I'm not painting the back except for the lighter ones.
So you can just paint the back with white paint if you want.
Mm-hmm. So then here is what I was talking about with the opal. So here's the side piece, so it grows like this.
Yeah.
So the top pieces you can get bigger, but the side has that wicked green on it.
Yeah, I think they must grow it. As you say, it takes a long time to grow. They must grow the crystals up.
It's grown exactly the way a natural opal would
Pass that around.
assemble itself over centuries. It's just accelerated, but it's very, very close. The main difference between it and natural opal is it doesn't have flaws in it.
You know, we got it.
You still need lapidary equipment.
Yeah, it's solid silica.
But it comes in all these crazy colors and like something like a dragon eye. It's great. Even a tiger eye.
There you go.
Another thing that comes in fun colors and that is super stable to cut is corian. So we buy especially the black in like these huge countertop shapes, and we cut it down ourselves. So in this example of the dragon, like I needed to keep those really fine ribs and abs and stuff. We kept saying that guy was working out too much. But not many other materials I could use to keep that and it wouldn't blow away, you know.
Larry Robinson, you probably heard of, sorry to interrupt, but
No, please do.
he's got a couple of tricks he does. He goes to yard sales and he looks for plastic children's toys of different colors.
Yeah.
He buys them and cuts them up and gets all kinds of colors out of those. It's a real affordable way to get a real palette of things to work with.
You go to Home Depot and get the little sample pieces of accordion and
Yeah.
slice them up.
So the reason why I needed the corian because I wanted to inlay the parts. I was worried about how we were going to inlay the body, and I wanted to be able to put in big pieces, not a bunch of little pieces. So I needed the corian so I could put in large chunks at a time. Sure.
Now, you're inlaying, that body's, three-dimensional and
Mhm.
stuff. So how do you scale the CNC cutting so it cuts along the curve?
Well, so that's a tricky one.
Okay, well, then-
To be honest, we haven't really figured it out quite yet. It's a lot of trial and error. On a gradual curve, you're not going to really notice, but on that really steep curve
Yeah.
on the side, yeah, that's a longer talk.
It's a two-axis CNC, not a three-axis.
Yeah, we just
Yes.
have X, Y, and Z. Yeah. But I mean, the software will project the cavity, but you need to alter the parts pretty much to get, because they're elongated.
Right.
And some of the laminate shell, if it's thin enough, and when it's heated, it becomes semi-flexible.
Oh, so you can,
And you can, on some parts, if the curve isn't too much, you can cut the part and line it up with the cavity and put a vacuum bag over it and suck it down and bend it right into the cavity.
Hmm.
if you heat that stuff, and then when it cools, does it hold the curve?
Yeah, it's an epoxy that holds it together, so you
Okay.
kind of just soften that epoxy.
So you don't have to glue it down at the same time?
Well, you still got to glue it,
Good.
yeah, but you can use a vacuum bag
Vacuum.
to get it down into where it needs to be.
So unfortunately, when the Fish and Wildlife got involved with all our paperwork, everybody moved to plastic. It's like, oh, save the world, use oil-based products. So they smell bad, they're gross to cut, but they don't look half bad.
Do you have to send out lots of paperwork with, dragons and stuff, with listing everything that goes into this? And
Well, the thing is, we don't sell to the end user. So Aulson Inlay does not have to do any of the paperwork. PRS does, Martin does,
So
Duke
we
of
always
Pearl, who's
leave a
selling the
list.
shell, does.
A list of everything that's in there.
Yeah, so when we work with the Inlay suppliers, we always require a list of materials. Because Michael, who's walking around here, big tall guy,
Yeah.
he's gotta submit that in for, permitting and everything else.
So you have to get not only the fact that it's got, pink abalone in it, but you have to, where the source for the pink abalone was, that it was correctly
Not
sourced?
necessarily, but we do have to list the exact materials.
Okay.
Yeah,
If it's going out of the country,
yeah.
then that all has to go through Fish and Wildlife and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, and, what to do all the paperwork, and we're very, very strict about the country of origin and chain of custody, and
Oh, the
so that
material.
Martin, we keep everything, and Martin will know that, that guitar is certified, certificate of origin.
Because you've kept track of where the inlay material came from.
Yeah, the people we deal with for the raw shell, if it's required at their end, we get copies of their business license, their fish and wildlife permits, or whatever the agencies they deal with, all the licensing and stuff that's necessary, we have that on file. If it's a foreign company that has a distributor here, we ask to see the forms that got it into the US legally. They can block out any sensitive information, so if there's any further questions, if we get investigated by the government, we can show that paperwork, things blacked out, but they can go to our source and see the actual documents. But yeah, we have to name the Latin name, the common name, the country of origin, and not only the number of pieces, but now also the weight on particular items a lot of times. And they even ask the country of manufacture, although that's not on that form. And so I've even had to fill out paperwork to show I'm not a terrorist. And so they can come up with all kinds of paperwork that really isn't technically necessary, but you're not gonna argue with the agents that are clearing your ship. You kind of just give them what they want,
Well, and plus to that point, even if it's an imitation mother of pearl,
Yeah.
you still have to say it's it's faux or acrylic or whatever, because they'll look at it, and if they feel it's an endangered
Yeah.
pearl, because they can't tell the difference, they'll confiscate it.
Yeah, there's the white pearl is white. The mother pearl comes from a bivalve in
Yeah.
Australia or somewhere. And there's an endangered white abalone on the west coast. It's never been used for inlay. It's too small and thin to use. But white pearl, because it's white pearl, there's been a couple instances where if it wasn't declared properly, they assume it's a white abalone, which isn't even white. And now you really got a whole can of worms you got to unravel for them.
The other thing we have to be careful of is that once a year, like Martin or PRS will send to make sure that none of these products contain any of the things that can't go to California, or, that we're certifying that, it's not gonna kill somebody. And you can cut it and it's legal, but they check once a year to make sure that anything that we're using fits in the parameters that they need to have.
So this is Ellen Aulson and Chuck Erickson from Duke of Pearl and Tim Teal from Martin Guitar, in case anybody should have said that earlier.
One thing that's going on with inlay materials, there are inlay materials available on the internet, on eBay and all kinds of places. And a lot of that stuff is coming in illegally. They're small shipments, and they're coming in kind of under the radar. If you use that stuff and you were ever investigated and the feds want to see paperwork, you couldn't produce it, and neither could the guy that you bought it from. And everybody would be in trouble. That whole chain of custody could be legally in trouble. And so one thing we're kind of fighting is we're doing all this work and spending extra money to bring stuff in legal, and we're competing with guys that are bringing stuff a lot cheaper and doing it illegally, and they're not getting caught. Even if I send a list of those guys to Fish and Wildlife, to the feds, they say, yeah, we know that's going on. We're understaffed. They've closed a bunch of offices down in the US. We don't have time to do anything about it. Tough luck. And I go, well, we're doing it legally, and you're allowing unfair competition, and it's not their problem, it's ours, So there's nothing, I can whine about it, but there's nothing I can do about it. But we are doing stuff legally. So if you get anything from us, we're not afraid of being audited or checked by the feds.
Okay. Earlier we saw the axolotl that was blue. We started dyeing and stabilizing wood because of Tim Teal. We did a green in that ginkgo and purple in that hops guitar. So my dad built this humongous chamber. I think three kids could fit in there. And then we had this idea: if we build it, they will come. You know, we're gonna like put guitar bodies in there. We have not needed such a big chamber, but if anybody needs anything stabilized, we are ready.
Don't say that. It's sitting right there, and people use it.
But I mean, we would have enough for the whole job in there. I mean, it's huge. So it's really fun. If anyone hasn't done it before, you can get, it's called cactus juice, and you can buy these little containers and get pretty creative with it.
It was funny because we did do that one, you know, with green.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, you know, there's, well, even the one below.
Yeah.
With purple, there are natural grain lines that just won't take the stain the same way. And that was a big point of discussion at the factory because, you know, people would see like a tiny little line and be like, well, that's no good, we gotta reject this thing. Like, no, that's natural, that's fine, you know? And it became a point of a quality assurance discussion.
I bet.
Now, does that cactus juice leave the wood harder? I mean, so.
Yes. It basically makes it not wood anymore. Like it puts, it pretty much changes it into a resin. So lots of times we'll stabilize holly with no color, and it looks like ivory. But now it'll keep, it won't be as brittle. So I can cut very small parts that can go through the sander, and it.
Have you ever experimented with putting like an entire instrument in that?
Yeah. But then because we've done that for PRS, because they're using a lot of spalted maple and burl and stuff, but I think it ended up being too heavy. But
Yeah,
that's,
we
we thought.
played with it in the factory,
Yeah.
just on the R&D side, and the instruments become ungodly heavy.
Yeah.
So you're adding a lot of resin.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's an acoustic guitar, it feels like a Les Paul.
But it looks cool.
Looks cool, yeah.
This is a material Raffir. Don't really know how they make it, but it looks cool. That's in that dragon. This is also I got from Mazecraft. On the table, I have one that looks like a coral reef. I have no idea how to cut that. I have not tried, but it looks cool. Here's more examples of that epoxy putty. I saw a bunch of this dye in the back room here by the resin. So you can really make whatever color you want. For us, that would be a problem for production, being able to repeat that same color. But this Joker was just a one-off, so it's pretty fun to work on. And on the right, this bourgeois, it was a way to not have 10,000 parts in that head plate. We were able to use the epoxy to separate the part. So those are really only like 8 parts instead of 100.
So you cut channels that then you could fill with epoxy, but the
Mhm.
channel didn't go all the way through.
Nope.
It was just enough, it's kind of like engraving.
Well, it's about, no, it's more like 40,000, 50,000, because we
Yeah.
don't want them to sand it away.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're cutting into the surface of the stuff
Yep.
and filling it.
And I have found if anybody does this that you're going to want to put black dye with the black because it just doesn't get black enough. It's more like a gray when it dries.
And what kind of dyes do you use?
It's this one right here. We'll have to look at it. Yeah, but I can show you in the back room here because I saw a whole. I didn't know there were that many.
Is it Smooth On dye?
I think so.
Yeah. So Smooth On is a local company. They make all kinds of crazy epoxies and
Yeah.
dyes for movie industry and
Mm-hmm.
Disney and all kinds of stuff. So
There's never been a time in history of instruments where there's been so many choices for playing around with Inlay. We just had an endless palette to work with, the materials and textures and colors and all kinds of stuff, so pretty lucky.
This is the dragon we're working on now. So what I did was I cut a cavity for this gold mother of pearl piece, glued it in, and then cut the cavity for the white epoxy, put the epoxy in, and then I cut the eyeball. I can't show you the rest of them, he's super secret. And I think that's all I got.
So again, that thing is registered enough in the CNC that you can cut a little bit, take it out, epoxy it, put it back in the same place.
I actually just, something like that, I leave it on the table because I don't want to have to worry about lining it up.
So you
But there
leave-
are ways to take things on
You
and off
leave it
the table.
to schmutz the epoxy across and then continue.
Which makes my dad really mad because look how dirty my table is. That's why he won't let me use his machine. So.
Jamie, how quick does that epoxy putty dry?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
And lots of times when I use it, I'm not cutting through it again.
Right.
So I don't even care if it's dry or not.
Gotcha, okay.
Like this one, I didn't cut through it, so.
And it's pretty hard when it
Yep.
hardens?
Yeah, I get a straight edge razor and cut off a little slice, and you can see it on the right there. And I put gloves on. You mix it with your fingers, and just slide it on with the razor blade.
And squeegee it down.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
That's awesome.